Hi, everybody. I hope you're having a good day today. We are back with Poker Mind Expansion, Episode 4. Um, so, one thing I'd like to say about what happens when we start questioning things is that we're often met with a lot of resistance. From, say, like social networks, people, etc. Say, if we have an idea that goes against their current identity with how things work, as if there's like a way that things work that's an opinion, that's not just reality, as if you can make reality into a concept. But there are a lot of times that we speak about our opinion of a hand and it may offend someone else because we are not reinforcing their current belief. And this can be very difficult to be able to speak to other poker players if our interest is truth. And our interest is understanding our opponent's psychology better than they understand their own psychology. It becomes a tremendous difficulty when we are confined to thinking about poker with other people and not going within ourselves. I would also like to say that I would not expect any support from any poker friends. In fact, it might even be met as a threat to their current identity. They would never be able to say that. So what they might say is that what you're doing is wrong, what I'm doing is right, my thing is superior, you should be more like me. So I would not say that going to other people and making these suggestions is necessarily a good idea. I think that accepting people and giving them love can be good. I don't know, in my life, I don't really tell people to do things personally. But maybe it can be helpful. But I think that the thing that we have to look at is our own doubt, is our own resistance to breaking every single thing down in poker from first principle and deconstructing this house of cards of beliefs that we've created and really trying to understand the intricacies. Why our opponents play this situation. You see, when we see a board, we think we know what it is when we are opening in the cutoff and we're playing against the button because we've played this situation many times. We have the feeling that, yes, I know this. The reality is that we've never seen this situation in our life. This is the only situation that exists. All this idea, all this knowledge that we're getting from this thought-projected past is saved as a memory inside of us. We're playing a completely fresh person. And Albert Einstein does not make decisions burdened by the past. He has an absolutely free mind to make any association needed without trying to stop it at a solution. One of the arguments that some of the poker players will very likely make if we give any suggestions to our friends about trying to go deeper than just solving for zero is that they might say that poker's been around for about 200 years, depending on the format that you're talking about. And only in the last 10 years have we even had solvers available for public use. And you'd want to give up this opportunity simply to meditate, something that people have been doing for thousands of years, and what has it given them? It's a very logical argument that they make. In fact, incredibly logical. If you're trying to play a game to make zero and not lose. Poker has nothing to do with attempting to not be exploited. If that's your goal, then you're not even playing. You're playing like a paranoid schizophrenic. If you really understand the game, then you already know what to look out for. You already know what your opponents are capable of. You already understand the counters that they will try to employ against you. And you already can evaluate whether or not they can do this. So you don't need to worry about trying to play so much less exploitable against possible counters that they would play. You can simply directly exploit them. But as long as everybody lives in this delusional land of I'm going to attempt to not be exploited, they don't even think about what the problem is that they need to solve. How do I make money? How do I beat my opponent? The edge that we are going to end up having is simply because of our opponent's delusion. In fact, they don't even know it's delusion because they will recite that the GTO is math and it's real. But they haven't even questioned what problem they're trying to solve. What am I trying to do in poker? And they will go on about, well, of course we're going to use a little bit of exploitative. But how can you even use GTO if you don't understand game theory? What, you've just gone to a solver and clicked a few Pi solver buttons and you believe that this pictorial thud, which arises as a memory in game about how you should play right now, has any meaning past alleviating your negative feelings and your doubts about how you're not actually good enough? I'm sorry, but if you were good enough, then you would not have that doubt. So there's no reason to look for a solution, because there are no solutions. Poker is just infinite possibilities, but only the conflict solution mind wants to stop it. Boom. Boom. Fortunately, EV and love for this game go together, and it comes from truth. It doesn't come from trying to stack layers and layers and layers of words as a defense mechanism to be able to run away from the reality that we don't know what the fuck we're doing. There's no possibility of knowing directly anyways. We can only build a better model, but the brain thinks in terms of black or white. Black, I don't know, or I know. White, I know, or I don't know. Nothing works like that. You have to be really, really one-dimensional in a one-dimensional world locked away in a little box if you believe that those things are the case. And I don't think that we do, because we've been making a living at poker for a very long time. You see, but this is the way that we've been trained to think in. And in fact, this is even the way that training sites are able to sell in, because they want to give the illusion that we're learning to alleviate this pain of not knowing. But there's nothing wrong with being ignorant. Ignorance is absolutely beauty. It simply means that we are not burdened by the past knowledge, and that we are able to look at our opponents right now without putting millions of things on top of them and be much more clear. So what actually goes on in our head when we end up receiving a hand? Do we have any sort of like self-referential thought? Like, wow, I've not had a good hand for a while. Or, wow, this guy's 3-bet me a bunch of times, and having some sort of emotion along with that. Of course, we don't want to admit this, right? We don't feel mad when someone 3-bets us. I want to admit it. Fuck this guy. He 3-bet me 10 times. This motherfucker. He's the worst person in the world. He's so big and bad. First of all, I hope we don't think in terms of like only language. Language is fine. I hope we're thinking about poker in terms of like a pictorial thought, much more fluid, much more multidimensional. A great visionary named Leonardo da Vinci said that if you're not thinking in pictorial fluid thought, then you're thinking inside of a prison. The strategy mind has so many dimensions, but if you're stuck in language and you are stuck in this world of where you're trying to convey your ideas to other people, then you've never had a single original thought in your entire life, because you have not gone beyond language yet and realized that language is simply a game that is trying to bridge a gap which is unbridgeable. We have to go beyond language. Leonardo da Vinci was interested in his pursuits like a child. Everybody else around him acted like such a big grown-up. In fact, even Da Vinci and Machiavelli were friends. And Da Vinci would often try to point out to Machiavelli that he was more interested in conveying that he knows some ideas about things that he's talking about more than knowing the ideas. He's more interested in conveying the fact that he knows about these things to other people, so he's perceived as knowledgeable, rather than him being interested in the actual ideas themselves. And Machiavelli was a very intelligent man, and he made his decisions. But Da Vinci was far more interested in the purity and the beauty. He was not interested in winning friends and influencing people. He was interested in truth. He was interested in using his creativity, in expanding his mind and feeling the love of existence. Da Vinci approached life with such joy, like a little child, a young child that runs and tries to catch butterflies and sings and dances and hasn't learned that he's a bad person and isn't allowed to have fun. He needs to be sad. He needs to be in a box. He needs to be in a cage for no reason other than other adults are uncomfortable. And they are just like pretending to be characters in movies. Like they're just playing roles. And they believe that it's actually them. Of course not. Life is just a game. It's an absolute joy. Even Da Vinci met Michelangelo. And you see, Michelangelo was much more straight and narrow. He was much more into just copying arts that he has seen before. Yes, he was absolutely talented, but he was not 1/100th of a Leonardo da Vinci. And in fact, they met together. And in fact, Michelangelo was far more interested in the attention that he was getting from people and what it did for him in the eyes of others relative to his actual pursuit. He was not a Vincent van Gogh. Leonardo da Vinci loved what he did. We've never seen another mind like Leonardo da Vinci in history, with how he was able to combine art and science and make it much more feasible for us to be able to expand our imagination and conceive and think in different perceptions that we've never had. Remember, it's not like we have actually ever seen certain things in reality, right? The only way, say, we've never seen a molecule with our eyes. Okay, it's not something that we can perceive. So maybe we read a textbook, and then we see a model that they draw, and they give us information, and then our brain creates a model, and then if we're very unconscious, we believe, oh, this is a molecule, as if knowledge and pictorial thought combined is actually the molecule. No, we don't have access to molecules. I mean, yes, we have access to molecules, but not in a way that we can differentiate this from that. Not in that way, right? So we have to start to put fertilizer in our garden. We have to start to put water in our garden and put a fence up for our very beautiful seed of consciousness, for our imagination to grow. We have to be like a child. We cannot be this silly man who gets angry when he loses a river card because he's just dreaming about 3 months in the future. I can't pay for this. Oh man, this person is mad at me. He thinks he's not even like a strategist. He's just like a little child. Like, go watch Doug Polk. Come on, like don't like waste your energy. Or give yourself loving compassion. And then sit and actually feel those bad feelings. And don't try to run to Pio Solver more so you can win more and get more angry. But like, look at the reality. That like, that shit doesn't fucking work. Not that Pio doesn't work. Absolutely not. But if you're a slave of your emotions and you think that you can play poker, you're absolutely delusional. You're completely dreaming. Completely dreaming. Jesus said, I tell you the truth, unless you change and you become like fucking children. Well, I don't think he said fucking, excuse me. Okay? You're never going to enter the kingdom of God. Right? And what does he mean by that? Jesus Christ is not talking about the afterlife when you're dead. Jesus Christ is talking about mind expansion. He's talking about enlightenment. He's talking about samadhi. He's talking about self-realization. He's talking about creativity. He's talking about love. He's talking about dance. He's talking about singing. He's talking about hugging, kissing, poetry. But the society is much more interested in getting us to watch things on television like two men beating the shit out of each other. What a barbaric, disgusting thing, and we call this entertainment. But then society makes us feel bad for our own love. We see people kissing and making love, and we call that PG-13. Children are not allowed to watch. In fact, there's a thing where a man inserts his penis into a woman's vagina, and they call that explicit. But they show you videos of killing people. Of course, they don't want men to cry because they shame men for having emotions until they're suppressed. You see? If you have a society of men who cry, they're not going to fucking want to go to war. They're going to want to play piano. They're going to want to play video games. They're going to want to play with their dog. They're going to want to do intelligent things, not simply be slaves. Women are much more natural. Only because of the mistreatment that society does to men. Women are much more free, much more intelligent, much more fluid, like water. Not because they are born that way, it's only because of the way that the minds are conditioned, and it's very superficial. But men are shamed, and they're told you're not allowed to cry. But if you ever see a man crying, if you ever see a man expressing how he actually feels, then he's shamed. He's shamed. No. You cannot express yourself or you're making everybody else uncomfortable. You're a man. Don't you know your role? But you see, all gender roles, all social roles are absolutely disgusting because it's a presupposition on how you should behave. If you think that you should behave in this way or that way, then you're not natural. A deer does not have this presupposition. Only a socialized human being who believes in his own social conditionings and calls it his own opinion does that. But poker players, again, are far more intelligent than to simply sit in the trap and go work at Jack in the Box, go work at 7-Eleven, go work at Burger King. And there's nothing wrong with those things. No insult to anybody that's doing that. But I'm simply trying to point out the fact that if we're already playing poker and we're making a living at it, then we already have a far more superior intelligence to the rest of society. Not because we're better human beings if we believe that we're going to look at someone else and then imagine how they are worse than us because they have a lower IQ. Then we have some serious insecurity. Maybe we need to go to therapy. Maybe we need to get a hug from our mom. Maybe we need to meditate and get some love. But we don't need to kind of perpetuate this judgment. But this is how we're taught to think in terms of superiority, inferiority, because the society is absolutely hierarchical. Now, Jesus was trying to explain a little metaphysical fact. And any physicist will confirm this with you. The Christians don't understand, but a physicist, a scientist will confirm what Jesus says. Jesus says that I and my Father are one. He also says, which maybe sounds like a contradiction, but it's absolutely not. He says that I and man are one. I and all beings are one. I am one with life. A physicist will confirm this, by the way. If you believe that the psychological character in your brain that says you're separate from reality is actually separate, you should go see a physicist. Because each moment that you're moving, you're going into a completely different field of atoms. You're not the one that's doing it, by the way. The big floating ball of rock that we're spinning on is going into a new atom field all the time. So whatever you are is not atomically bound. This is physics. It's not religion. Religion is operating on belief. And true religion, which is about the subject, which is about going inside of ourselves, not focusing on the object, which science is a set of methods for making predictions about objective reality, you could say. For instance, a very general definition. But we could say that religion is about making realizations about ourselves from the subjective, not going to a church and getting attention and telling other people that we believe in God and getting pats on our backs. That's a bunch of bullshit. It's okay because it's beautiful if you want to meet your friends and you want to share love. But if you think that you're only going to meet God at the church, God is all around you 24 hours a day. And if you think that God does not like certain parts of your life because they're irreligious, then you don't know what religion is. Most Christians don't even know that Jesus Christ went to India and he went and studied Buddhism until he became enlightened. But Christians are basically the same mindless people that went and killed Jesus Christ. They are the same people. They are no different. They don't think for themselves. They only borrow their knowledge. They don't do any kind of fact-checking. They don't know history. They don't study it for themselves. They only say pleasant things to other people about Jesus so they feel community. But that does not actually help you become free. Jesus was telling you that you are perfect and that you don't need to rely on anybody else, that you yourself are one with God. And then you have these people who have been taught to hate themselves so much that they find it necessary to tell you that you're not good enough. But if you do something in the future, then you'll be better. No, reality is that the human brain does not understand the ordinary separated state of consciousness. They cannot understand why they are in so much pain, why logic goes against their entire perception, why there's so much pain coming out of nowhere. So they create beliefs to explain their emotions. But if you're not a slave of your emotion, it's if you've realized that your emotions are just reminders, they're not actually going to kill you, you're not under threat, it's just what it's supposed to feel like. Biologically, it's supposed to make us feel like we're dying, to remind us not to be killed by a predator, except that we mix up thoughts with reality, and we mix up associations with this thing being threatening, like a door slamming, with something that happened 20 years ago when an ex slammed the door and we got whatever, right? So there's this association. And then there's this nervous system which is, boom, hijacking us. Fear, pain, etc. Now, all the identities that I'm a Christian, I'm a Jew, I'm Buddhist, I'm any religion whatsoever, it's still an identity. Nobody that actually wakes up can be identified with it. One of these things, because all these are just ideas that exist in our mind. So if you think you have the idea of, say, like Christianity, and then you know that this other thing exists, this other religion, whatever, and you say, I'm better than this one, but it's only off of the backs of the other one. Obviously better, you have to compare better to something else that is worse. So in order to make your thing better, you have to look around and find someone that's worse. It's completely ungodly to do something like that, because God would only love. God loves everybody and everything perfectly. But because something goes against someone's beliefs, they say, oh, this man is bad, he's against God. No, what the reality is that something hurts someone's feelings, and because they don't have the capacity to understand why these words are so insane, they think the reason why they're feeling bad is because it's against God, and that's their justification. No, you just don't understand your emotions. God loves you, right? When we're playing poker hands and we have negative thoughts and emotions that arise, we can sometimes experience them in the form of how things should be different, for instance. So there's reality, something is a certain way, and then we have a pictorial hallucination, thought on top of reality. Right now is not good. If it was something else, so we are imagining, we're not looking at reality, right? Reality is physical reality, what's in front of us. And we are imagining how if something was different, then it would be better. See how illogical this is. There's no possibility of something being different because there's no such thing as time. Time only exists as a pictorial thought. So how is this logical? You see, the brain does not do things that are logical because it's hijacked by the emotional system. So it creates beliefs like time. It creates beliefs like space. If you ask yourself very logically, these are not philosophical points, these are obvious facts, by the way. If you ask yourself, you can only access reality through the five senses. So you can only hear, taste, smell, touch, see. That's how you experience reality. You don't experience reality through ideas. You're only experiencing yourself. Ideas exist within your brain. It's not like ideas about like, yes, you may go to the refrigerator and you may not have the thought. This is a machine that has a cool temperature that keeps food preserved. You may not have that consciously, but you still understand the meaning. So you don't see the refrigerator, you see the meaning of refrigerator. So we have to become more conscious, and we have to be more aware of what this actual internal dialogue is when we're playing poker. So what is the need for certainty anyways? Why is it that when we're in a hand, we have a feeling we need to know what the EVs are? We need to know what we're doing. First of all, we never know. It's very likely that our opponent is almost always better than us when we're playing, right? Or it's very likely. Well, it depends on the stakes that we're playing. No, that was not really a correct statement. But it's very likely that our opponent is better than us. And when I say very likely, I'm not saying like 70%. What I'm saying is that if you look in a pool and you're not just like sitting there with your ego, I know more than everybody, but you look very objectively at a pool and the amount of people that play and the amount of people, say you've made some money. And obviously you have made a decent amount of money because you're taking money out of the pool. But again, like who are we playing? What are our opponents? Our brain always creates a model of what our opponent is doing. But the brain only can think in terms of this is what he's doing in this node. This is what he's going to do in that node. It cannot simultaneously see everything. Imagine how multi-dimensional poker players already think relative to the rest of the world. Poker players are already very rebellious, very intelligent, great thinkers. There's a reason why poker is so entertaining, because it's a game of psychology. And that is the ultimate pursuit, to be able to know oneself. There's nothing higher than knowing oneself. But any logical human being who sits and thinks for more than a minute would be able to agree with me, I think, that we cannot directly know the EVs in this pursuit of constantly trying to figure out a no, which is not even thinking and not even hand reading and being critical about what do I think he's doing at this moment. It's actually just reinforcing we have a current belief what to do. But it's not even like we're thinking. We're just recalling ideas like a robot. Yeah, this is what Pio Solver says to do on this flop. I think he's going to do that. I'm going to do that. Boom. Well, how many hands an hour are you playing? Are you playing like 400 hands an hour? Slow down. Go slower. Think. You'll never expand your mind if you're running on a hamster wheel. Go. We're all going to die. So you don't get any extra chips for going faster. At the end, you're going to die. So what extra do you get by running faster? Is it possible that it's just how we're trained to go? Is that possible whatsoever? Is it a remote possibility? That it's simply our conditioning that makes us go without ever being able to stop? No way. Absolutely not. It's the most productive thing to do 3 things at once and all of them doing a shit job, because I feel more secure about myself when I say that I accomplish more things. But if I looked at actually what I'm accomplishing, have I looked at the depth and I say, man, it's so hard to get better. No, it's only hard because everybody solves the wrong problems. We have the greatest opportunity in the history of the world as poker players, because nobody's even solving the right problems, because everybody is so terrified of actually opening their minds and thinking for themselves. So these people that are unwilling to are all the same people who we are going to be able to get an edge against. And it's not about getting an edge. More so, it's about being able to play against tougher and tougher opposition and having more and more fun. Obviously, if you play against video game players, you don't want to play weak video game players. Poker is like, yeah, it's all about making money. But they haven't understood that like the difference between like $1 million and 10 million is not very much. If you can actually support yourself for food, and you can support yourself for a space to live, then you don't need anything else. If you want to get all these amazing, fancy things, great, amazing, no problem. But what I'm saying is that does not fulfill your soul. The soul wants to be able to really love this magical pursuit, not just buy a bunch of big toys so other people will think that we're good enough. Most of the reason why we want to buy so many things is mostly out of insecurity, because we think that we'll be perceived bad by others, but it's not possible for us to be bad, because it's only an illusion, it's only a delusion that we could compare ourselves to another and think that we could somehow be inferior. It's not possible. It's only like a dream. It's not possible. So what actually is this pain mechanism, this go, right now is not okay, but if I do something in the future, then I will feel better? What is this deep unconsciousness? Are we not aware that it's impossible to feel better in the future because the future doesn't exist, and the reason why the problem exists doesn't exist? It's like a hallucinated idea on top of reality that's superimposed. within our perception. It's what's in spirituality is referred to as the ego. Why do we have such a difficult time stopping and taking a breath? Who hurts? What hurts? Do we understand that when we say, I'm in pain, I cannot stop going, it's happening for a reason? It's not just coming out of thin air, but we think that we are separate from everything that we've tried to stuff under the bed and never look at. We are a completely different person each moment. Our body is being regenerated with new cells. Every 7 years we have a completely different body. Atomically we're constantly different, moving into new fields of atoms. So what is it that we are? We are actually observing what happens inside of us. And when we say, this cat is going to attack us, and we have these big feelings, and we feel scared, and we feel angry, which is equivalent. These emotions are simply reminders. It's not like any emotions are different. It's not like crying or laughing or being happy or sad. It's not like these things are actually different. These are simply reminders. In fact, true happiness is beyond the mind. True happiness is simply peace, is nothingness, is emptiness, shunyata, samadhi. So this kind of mechanism, the ego, this part of us that wants to avoid painful experience, that wants to run away. There may be many different vessels for this mechanism. It may come in many different faces with mirrors and smoke screens. It may come through different thoughts in our mind. There may be a situation that manifests, but ultimately we're giving the situation the meaning. Again, a child is like a blank piece of paper. He's free all the time because he doesn't put meaning on top of things. A child is absolutely ignorant, right? An adult is very knowledgeable, which is what perpetuates his pain and his fear and his imprisoned life. We hear that 1 in X people will get cancer. So then we have the fear, wow, I don't want to get cancer. Let me change my life situation, XYZ. Because we're always looking to avoid painful experience in the future. So our entire life is ruled by looking for conflicts to put out illusory problems that are simply fairy tales, aka our own thoughts. We hear a thought and then we get scared. Do we understand that thoughts cannot make us scared unless we don't have the capacity to differentiate thoughts from fear? An animal is scared when it's about to be eaten or when it hears a hyena coming, right? This little baby bird gets very scared when he hears a T-Rex, right? Which maybe the T-Rex is a big bird. He's not such a baby. He's a frickin' chicken. Look at his fucking chicken wings. Look at him flapping those big old wings. But you see, he's only scared at that moment when he sees the predator. He's not sitting his entire life hiding in a cave because he's terrified that there might be a predator in 10 years. No, he just experiences reality. But the way that the human brain collects trauma and deals with trauma is by looking for solutions against negative emotions. In fact, this is what creates immense suffering. This is why man becomes imprisoned within his own mind, within himself. But this idea that there's something to actually solve when we have pain, that we need to do something to solve it, this preconceived idea is not actually true, because it's just a thought. And you see, the problem is that the actual system that has suppressed emotional pain has to be dealt with, has to be processed. All of this stuff that's going on under the hood, we cannot just put new ornaments inside and expect, and put air freshener inside and expect the car to drive correctly without the correct maintenancing, It needs the correct fuel. There are many different aspects to what we are. But any modern physicist can even confirm that there are no objective problems. And all these problems exist within the mind that gives meaning to concepts of problems. Or if we believe in the world still and we have not unseen that, then we can say that we believe in the world and we think this world is causing us problems. We have yet to unsee that actually all emotions exist within us. It's not like emotions can be superimposed outside. It's just a reminder system to tell us that this situation might be dangerous, but it's far more vast and complex than we can consciously understand because it's connected to millions of things from our childhood. About this guy has an opinion, money doesn't matter to me. I'm a very jovial man. I go to church, I support people, da 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 da. But he's constantly talking about money. He's terrified about not having enough, etc. In fact, many people are like this, and then they go and become successful and rich, and they're like a squirrel that collects 100,000 acorns in a hole and doesn't share it with his friends, and thinks that everybody is out to get him, and that somehow, there are other squirrels that aren't as intelligent as me. I've been collecting so long, without realizing that when he's dead, they're not gonna have any utility. Like the whole point of these nuts that are not yours, they're simply coming out of the earth. We've come out of the earth as well. We're not fucking special. We're just a man arising out of the earth, mutually with these acorns, and we are both going to go back into the earth, and then we will come back in a different form with the same combination of parts as we always have, because this is the circle of life. But this form will certainly go, and if we want to find something that is deeper than just the body, it requires us to water the seed of consciousness. Now, a physicist can also say this. Poker players still cling to their beliefs about poker, but a physicist will say all beliefs are simply an idea about the way that reality relates, but reality is only something that you can know through sense perceptions. It's not something that you can know in your mind. There's nothing that can be said about that. But the problem is that the training industry, which has been giving us this false notion for over 15 years now in poker, has only gotten stronger. In fact, if you're looking at it from the perspective of trying to do well and trying to exploit people, and you're going to make money from this because people are unconscious and you're going to become conscious, you may view this as not a conflict. You may view this as a good thing. I view this as very sad, because I want everybody to be able to play poker at a very high level. I want everybody to be able to love and appreciate this game. And there's an unnecessary amount of competitiveness in this society which stems from our own insecurity and believing that we're not good enough to begin. That's the only way that this kind of thing can even arise, this idea that I want to be competitive. Now, I'm not talking about in terms of monetary resources for what we do with our body. I'm talking about the psychology behind believing that our emotional feelings and our system will feel better as a result of doing something. This may be the case that we may get money and then we may be in a better life situation, and because of that we are less triggered by our own insecurities about if people see us as poor, if people see us as this way, then we're going to feel bad. And this is what rules our emotional life. But even if we get money, we're still going to have those exact same insecurities and beliefs in our operating system. They're just not being triggered. So money is simply a very small thing. The reason why people want money is because they've been trained since like 3 years old about how money is everything. So they're not even able to logically discern about how money does not equal anything in terms of their emotional system. The reason why it helps them is because they believe that it matters. A child is absolutely happy without money, but they're so foolish. A tree is absolutely happy without money, right? A deer is completely perfect without money, but only someone who's been brainwashed to think that if they don't have money, the world will end cares for such a stupidity. And it's important. It's a good thing that we have, because we certainly want medicine and we certainly want shelter. It's very nice to be able to not be bitten by bugs. It's nice to be able to have people help us. So there's nothing wrong or right. It's only again, it's the mind that wants to think in these terminologies. Money or no money. No, it's just a tool. So you cannot like have an opinion for or against. You simply think about what this thing is in your life situation, how you want to use it, how you value it relative to the other things, and then you make a decision. It's not something that can be in opposition. It's simply a concept. But how can the conflict solution mind ever understand this? This is very, very, very difficult to be understood. Now, I've often heard from training sites that they're trying to convey this idea that if you don't study and you're less knowledgeable, then you're basically going to end up being more insecure. You're going to need a mental game coach. It'll be harder when you're in game, you're making decisions. In fact, this is actually the exact opposite. It's the opposite. This is not how... They have not studied neuroscience. They have not studied the brain. They have not studied psychology. They don't understand themselves. They're selling a product. So I want to make this information available that if you really want to get better, and you're struggling with training sites over the years and you realize that it's a trap, but you still want to cling on to it, you don't have to. You can actually just sit and meditate after you play poker for 2 hours. Sit for 1 hour and just think about the hands. You don't even have to meditate like, no, just think about poker, but don't use any external sources. Only inside your mind. You have to expand your mind. You cannot rely on anything else. We've been taught to rely on external agencies to alleviate these negative emotions, and it does not work like that. It does not work like that even a little bit. So this idea that the training sites are trying to alleviate this insecurity is absolutely stupid. Because what does it mean to actually be insecure? What does it mean to be ignorant? A child is ignorant, as I've said many times, and they're very intelligent, right? So ignorance is about knowledge. Intelligence has absolutely nothing to do with knowledge. Not even a little bit. If you don't understand that, then you don't understand life. A butterfly is perfectly intelligent because he's natural. A human, most Homo sapiens, are very unnatural, very conditioned. I would say they're very unintelligent because the majority of what they do has nothing to do with their own well-being, even though they think it does. Running around like a chicken with its head cut off, trying to please other people, without really understanding the deeper underlying problems of why we always feel so unsatisfied. And by the way, the majority of poker players are probably not mature enough in their life to make the realization that nothing external to you will ever give you deep fulfillment. Only when you look within, and poker is not external. Let's think about this very logically. Poker, again, is just a deck of cards with a bunch of agreements. So all of our knowledge, all of the things that we've ever learned in PioSolver, studying, thinking about playing hands, even when we're playing, we're technically studying because all this information is going into our brain. It's creating new associations. We're not separate from poker. Poker happens inside of our brain. And where are we? Are we like a person in a body? Of course not. We're the fucking body. And the fucking body has a brain. So do we think that we're separate from this poker? Obviously not. So we have to turn inwards. It's very, very important to think about this from with a knife, with logic, not with belief. So insecurities have nothing to do with knowledge acquisition or the need to feel like I'm in control when I'm playing a hand and I know what's going on. That feeling that you need to know what's going on so you can make sure that you're making EV, why don't you follow that up with the second thought of, if you think that you know what you're doing, does that mean you know what you're doing? No, of course not. That's just a belief coming from your own ignorance, from your own incapacity to realize that you cannot objectively know anything. The only way that you can know is through your 5 senses. So all knowledge is something that's happening within you. This is why we have to go beyond language. This is what Jesus talked about. This is what Buddha talked about. This is what Muhammad talked about. This is what Krishna talked about. This is what Lao Tzu talked about. This is what Ramana Maharshi talked about. This is what Eckhart Tolle talked about. This is what Deepak Chopra talked about. This is what all of the mystics have been talking about since the beginning. Since the beginning of our written history, they've been telling us that there are ways to expand our mind, but we are slaves of the society and we cannot wake up because we believe that these training sites are going to help us, and they won't. Only meditating and going within will. You're not going to learn from someone else. You're only going to learn from going within yourself. You certainly can learn from PioSolver, by the way, absolutely. But you have to at least be able to expand your mind to know how to use that information. And guess what? All the info that you've ever learned about PioSolver, databases, hand reading, everything, it's already inside of you. It's impossible to lose. This is what we need to do, is we need to create new connections with information that we feel that we've never even been able to remember for 10 years, 5 years, however many years. Because the brain becomes compartmentalized over time. We have this belief because the society says as you get older, things will get better. Of course, that's not true. It's just simply a way to get people to be your slave. But actually, if you look at neuroscience, something that's real, not just stupid words that are beliefs that make the ego feel better, but reality, actually, as we get older, the brain becomes less and less connected. It's able to make associations on the fly much less easier, much less malleable. This is why children are able to learn a language like that, multiple languages before the age of 5. But adults cannot even realize that Republicans and Democrats are absolutely no different, and that rather than hating each other, they should go and kiss and love each other and maybe help people in the street that don't have food. Maybe they should give them some shelter and not think about illusory problems with people that they've never even met in the Middle East and argue with each other. But they have a psychic parasite in their mind that doesn't allow them to see reality. It only allows them to experience hatred for others because they have negative emotions within themselves, and it hurts their ego to admit that, oh yeah, no one else is to blame for this. I'm not to blame for this. I'm not bad. This is just the way that the human brain works. It gives sensors and it gives responses like, hey, I kicked my foot on the door and I stubbed my toe, whatever. It really hurts. It's not like this door is bad. It's not like I'm stupid. It's just a reminder. Okay, well now, next time we go into reality, we will readjust. There's no morality in our actions. There's just actions happening. And then the ego that's so utilitarian. I want to make every single action perfect. It will judge your own actions. It's the voice in the head that says, damn, did I do this good enough? That's not you. That is simply a fucking program. It's like the Matrix, but it's not the Matrix. Because it's simply like a defense mechanism. It's like we're driving a car and we see the light turn yellow and our brain starts imagining scenarios where, wow, we could get, like, what we have to know the meaning of this yellow. And some people are more inclined to zoom past it because they have the idea that people will not go out in front of us and somehow we need to save time and blah, blah, blah. Other people will be much more conservative. I would never want to risk it. But these are all different perceptions, and these perceptions come from the knowledge that the driver will have. But the problem is that the brain believes in this objective. This is the way it is. They say, no, I will never do yellow because it's more fast and it's more dangerous. Well, first of all, dangerous is a very ambiguous word. Life is dangerous. You're going to die. So then you can start to say, like, well, what is the utility of when you see the yellow light and you're about 100 feet away? Should you hit the brake fast? What velocity should you stop? But then they confuse reality, like statistics, with morality because they want to condition you into being a slave and a robot in order to make decisions. Again, poker players are not at this low-level intelligence. They are far superior intelligence. Because they've been having to think and outthink other people who go and work jobs and make money at this game. They've had to think very deeply, and the rake deficit is very large. And even recreational players study. Even recreational players watch training videos. It's not like 10 years ago. Making a living is very difficult. So the intelligence that we already possess is deep. But what is insecurity? So insecurity has nothing to do with physical threat, psychological insecurity. Insecurity always has to do with the threat to the psychological image or the self-image or the sense of self. Children are basically always relaxed because they have not created meanings as to who's dangerous and who's not. That's why we say, kids, don't trust strangers. Be terrified of the world, which this might have good utility in a place that's not safe. So it's not like we should not teach them that either. We should just be able to differentiate, help them differentiate that not everybody is bad, but you may want to communicate with these people more, whatever the case is. Like, stay in this neighborhood. If someone is trying to give you free candy, maybe you don't take that, but we don't think they're a bad person. We just realize that it's dangerous, etc., right? But the way that we teach our children is through fear, making them terrified, until the people actually start to believe that things will happen to them particularly much more often than statistics. And they have this great reaction, I'm terrified of doing XYZ. And then we say, well, what is the likelihood that your body is threatened? And it's 0. Just about 1 in 10 million. And then it's like, well, what is this huge reaction? And then they say like, oh, there's something wrong with me. I shouldn't feel this way. There's nothing wrong with anybody. Everybody is completely perfect. It's just like social conditioning. We've run so many experiments on animals and we know everything about the neurology, but no one wants to look at the fact that the human brain is much more malleable, much more easily able to condition because of the split between the unconscious and the conscious. So let's say we're playing a game online and we, like make some big value bet, and then our opponent, like, we're on the river, we go all in for like 150 big blinds into the pot, we bet 1.5x pot, we're like, yeah, he tanks, he folds, he shows top pair, top kicker that he folded. It's a GTO 100% call, so he makes a huge exploitative fold, and then he calls us a nit. And then we get angry, fuck that motherfucker, I have bluffs here, I want to prove. Da-da-da-da-da. And then we feel like this emotion as if we want to prove. As if we're just like a gramophone record. Like someone just fucking like pushes the button and then we just have this recorded response. Like we're controlled by other people. This is social conditioning. We get mad and we feel the need to like respond to them in the chat because they call us a nit. And they're trying to prove their own insecurity. Because they're actually scared about making such a big fold, so they have the idea that they want to show you that they are superior to you, even though that if actually this was their strategy, then they should never tell you. If they truly believe that you are under bluffing, then they are absolutely stupid to be showing you their hand, but it's their ego that wants to prove that they know what they're doing. Do we see how irrational poker players are? But we don't want to look at how irrational they are, because if we see how irrational they are, then we will start to see our own irrationality. And our own irrationality scares the shit out of us. It's completely terrifying. So again, on average, intellectuals, like people like painters, people who love music, someone who can sit on YouTube and just listen to music, not try to acquire knowledge, not try to accomplish things, not try to talk to their friends. Someone who actually can just listen to music and enjoy and relax, or play video games, for instance. But not trying to get something and accomplish something. Just being able to relax, being able to sit and cook food and clean. Spend time meditating. These are all meditative practices. In fact, if we have access to children to play with or like pets, these are the greatest teachers because they have a much less developed sense of self. A dog has no sense of self. Their identity is the existence. They've not created a separate sense of self. And children, depending on where they are, they're much less conditioned. So they're very, very good teachers for us. In fact, they are the greatest teachers that we have. So people who are able to express their love and their beauty generally are much less insecure because they have less of a need to prove that they are so macho and they are so knowing and they are so big and bad. They're able to just dance because they remember, oh yeah, I'm going to die. So why would I do anything else other than love? Why would I collect these peanuts in the sky? Why would I not just love? There's nothing else other than love. So why are we even playing poker to begin with? So we have to start from first principle and ask, what are we even doing to begin with? We cannot just jump into arbitrary problems that we think are important. We have to start to think for ourselves. So are we playing because we love this game? Sure, we might need to pay the rent as well. Absolutely, there's no contradiction. But would we rather be playing poker than doing something else? Do we love this game? Well, if we love it, then why don't we give ourselves attention? Why don't we give ourselves the possibility to expand our mind? Most poker players I've met are not playing like children. They're not enjoying and loving and appreciating the magnificence of the impossibility of ever knowing anything about the game. Can you think of the tremendous gift that we have, that we're just born here? Or we're just floating on this ball of rock and we have computers and we can like play this strategy game and actually make a living? We don't have to go flip burgers. Can you imagine that this is a game that we can play for the next 1,000 years, assuming that humans do not self-destruct? Poker has no conflicts in it. It has no solutions. And if you can think that there are conflicts or solutions in poker, then you're believing in your own thoughts, because they're actually not anywhere to be found. Right? You only have decisions. Decisions are not conflicts or solutions. The only way that poker exists in reality, where it manifests in some way that you can even like directly know, is through your decisions. Those are not conflicts. If you call a decision that you're making a conflict and then you look for a solution, well, you've already put yourself on the cross. Because poker is absolutely infinite. You'll never be able to box it in. You can never pretend to know the box that it's in. And if you think you do, then you're very arrogant. And you believe yourself too much. We can see it everywhere. I mean, just look at people in study groups. They come and they just start opening their solver and looking at hand histories and pretending that they're actually getting a deeper comprehension, but they're not going deeper into the concepts. They're simply regurgitating what they already know to be seen as knowledgeable by other people. Vincent van Gogh is one of my favorite people in history. I have about 100 biographies on my shelf. I read a lot. I really enjoy reading. He's one of my favorite people simply because of his love and his passion. I've read a lot of biographies on successful people. And I realized that I did not give a fuck about who made more money. I was much more appreciative of the people that had passion and that had love. Now, to Van Gogh, it did not matter how he was perceived by others. It didn't matter how much other people thought that he was a master. Van Gogh was actually viewed as a fucking loser and very ordinary and mentally ill in his time. I certainly cannot agree with that, and I don't think that the majority of us would share that same opinion anymore. He was in love with what he actually did. He was absolutely in love, more than anybody that I've ever seen. A poker player has to have the capacity to believe that a river card is coming, and that has some sort of meaning to whether or not it's in his favor or his opponent's favor. And then he has to react in all these ways inside when this card is coming. Instead of thinking about what his opponent has on the other table, he's spending mental resources and energy like a robot programmed on just things to think about that don't matter. All children are exactly like Vincent van Gogh until they get conditioned to think about things that don't matter. It's not our fault, but at least we have to start watering the seeds of our consciousness and start thinking about where we're spending our mental resources. The truth is that our own brains are the greatest resources. We're far more intelligent than any super quadrillion computer that we can think of and invent right now. By trillions of miles. Is that not obvious how stupid Chat GPT is? It's a fucking parrot. It just repeats things. It does not know how to think. It's not creative. But that's what people are taught, is to repeat, and then they think ChatGPT, it's amazing. What stupidity. But that's because people do not have the ability to think in multiple dimensions. Now, Vincent van Gogh was kept in a psychiatric hospital. Actually, I think back then they probably called it like a loony bin or a madhouse or whatever. Okay, for about a year. And I don't think that this guy was actually crazy, if I'm being honest. He was painting things that we didn't even know existed. In the year that he was in the psychiatric ward, he painted his absolutely best paintings. And who puts you into a psychiatric ward? People that are scared, right? Why would you put another human being into a psychiatric ward if they're not a harm to other people? Even if they're a harm to themselves. Okay, then we help them out a little bit. But what is the situation? Why did they put Vincent van Gogh in the psychiatric hospital? I don't think he was insane. I think he was of a far superior intelligence of the ordinary man. And I think that there's even some evidence to suggest this. During the year in his painting, he painted some of the greatest pictures of the sun. And some of the sun pictures that existed at that time were simply circles, because the belief was that the sun is simply a ball. The stars are simply a ball. Now, Van Gogh was painting stars in spirals, and many people said, God, this guy is such an idiot. Why is this guy painting stars in spirals? He thinks he's so cool, just trying to be different than everybody else. Now, Van Gogh died, completely unknown. Nobody was interested. I'll speak more about him another time because I'm absolutely in love with the man and he's brilliant. But in the last 50 years, physics have also come to the same conclusion that Vincent van Gogh did over 150 years ago, that stars are much more spiral-like. They are not circles. How did Van Gogh come to that conclusion? You see, the ordinary mind thinks inside the box and it likes to label people as stupid or smart. But it would never be able to know this because it cannot superimpose itself inside of someone else. It just sees a few flash tad bits. I've seen this guy for 7 seconds and I hear a couple words and I believe that this entire model that I've created of this human being who's lived 40 fucking years, 30 years, that's lived his entire life, and that's all I've lived. I've only lived one experience. I think that I can know him. No, I'm just an idiot. That's all I am. Supreme ignorance, supreme arrogance to believe our own thoughts. But as poker players, if we believed our own thoughts, we would not have been making money. And I think that we can all agree with that. So we are not at any disadvantage. In fact, we are at a very large advantage to be able to understand ourselves and then to be able to understand our opponents much better than they can comprehend. And in fact, they will throw insults at us because they will not be able to comprehend us. Because it will be so challenging for them and it will confuse them because they will not understand us. This is another important point to make. I will continue with this. I think it's been a little while already. I love you all so much. I will speak with you soon. Mwah.